You're listening to the He Shoots, He Draws podcast, the show about photography, design, creativity, and more, with your hosts Dave Clayton and Alan Hess.
Okay, so this is part 2 of the interview with Dave Blass. Part 1, he talked about Star Trek and TV production. In this episode, he's going to be talking more about his relationship with Alan and how they go back to where they met and the work that they've been involved in and the stuff that they've done shooting as a music photographer and photography. So we do still touch a little bit back into the Star Trek world, but this is more about kind of Alan and Dave talking about their experiences, which is really interesting and great fun. And I said in part 1, can't thank Dave enough for his time. He gave us almost 3 hours of chat where we kind of planned for an hour. So I thought it would be best to split this up into 2. So again, thanks for listening to the show. Really appreciate everyone who listens and leaves comments and follows us. So hope you enjoy this part 2 and see you next time.
I want to just touch on one other thing, and that is the fact that you're a really good concert photographer.
I was just going to say
that's kind of how we met.
I mean, you know, it's funny. It's like when I'm talking to people and I'm talking to Mike Okuda, I'm like sitting there going, you know, he literally wrote the book on Star Trek, and like Alan literally wrote the book on concert photography, and it's like I swear to God, every time I go to shoot, I'm like, I'm gonna fuck something up, and people are like, oh, you got to do a book, and I'm like, no, I got to actually shoot a good photo, and for me, it's like I am 100%. It's a hobby because it started out because I go and I travel for all these shows, and you literally getting a call on a Friday saying Monday morning we got to be in Atlanta, and you can't bring stuff. So it's like you're there for 6 months in Atlanta. What do you do? And for me, photography is always the thing. I can bring my camera and I can go do things. And I had started getting into, when I was in New Orleans, getting into shooting live music, and I just liked, and it was the first time that I had just gotten a Leica Q, and the fact that you're in a club and you could actually get good exposure and do this stuff. So I started experimenting with it there, and then I just started getting more and more into it. And then I'm like, okay, so then I was like, I started doing model photography because that's really what everyone does. You're like, you're a dude, you go shoot pretty girls, and that's actually how I met my wife, because she was we were doing a modeling photography class together, and then the whole idea of like shooting, you know, pretty girls wasn't appealing to me anymore, less appealing to her. So I said, well, I enjoy shooting the music as much, if not more, because I enjoy. It's like an energy to me. The build up to the event, the fact that it's a short time. It's only, you know, the 3 songs you have. You got to get it right. The movement, the energy, so the experience of shooting the photos is almost as much fun as the photos themselves. So it's been something I'm building up to, but you know, it's just, you know, doing that in addition to other things. But yes, I had that like right in the middle of shooting one of these things. I was building the Enterprise bridge. I had the Enterprise D halfway fitted here. Had to go over and do this thing with Picard and explain to him, because he's like, why would I know what this bottle is? I go, well, it's Saurian brandy, sir. This goes all the way back to Captain Kirk and the thing. It's the same bottle. You would know that it's this bottle, which is why in 2024 it shouldn't be here unless she's an alien. And he's like, oh, that makes sense. And I had to run because I got to drive to Fullerton because I'm shooting Kiss tonight. And I'm standing there going, I'm going from the set of Star Trek Picard where I'm designing the Enterprise to going and shooting Kiss, and I'm only going, I lived the best life.
I was say, what a shit day that was.
And then it was 4 hours in traffic to Fullerton. But literally, you're in traffic going to Fullerton, going, and then you are at Kiss in the front row, 5 feet away from Paul Stanley, going, I got to get the shot of the pick on the tongue, and you know, having read Alan's book and knowing the things, and you know, having taken classes on and stuff. It's like knowing, people think, oh, you're a good photographer. It's like, no, I actually. Same thing that I do for photography is what I do for work. It's like, you got to train. You got to it's amazing how you're in the pit and you're watching photographers and so many young people, and they're winging it and going, I'm like, so did you study the concert tapes? And they're like, what do you mean? like, well, the band does the same thing every single night. So you got to know when in the thing. So how do you get that shot of Paul with the pick on his thing on his tongue, or you get the shot of Scotty Ian doing the split? You got to know when in the shot, when into the mosh that Scott does the jump, and you watch it and you go, okay, I got to be there, I got to set up. So you're going to know exactly when to go to get that shot. And they're like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. And it's like, no, it's not a random, there's a whole system of how all this stuff is done. And that's why I find that whole system to be exciting as well.
Yeah, I remember I took Alan's class at Photoshop World, and there's two things that have always stuck me because I still go and see my brother play, and I like taking photographs of him. It's two things: sticks up on the drums and no mic shadow on the face. It's just those little things that you just pick up as you watch. I mean, I was looking at your photography, Dave, and it's incredible. I think you shot Johnny Depp, didn't you?
I did, yeah, for Hollywood Vampires, and literally that was at the and it was funny again. I am so, and like I like to complain a lot, but I also like to go, okay, I am so incredibly blessed to have the experiences that I have in life. And I had a friend, for folks out there, I had signed up on the web to get a signed copy of Neil Losauer's book. And I had watched this documentary, and I'm like, oh my God, and I had his posters on my wall. And I remember as a kid, the name, it was just such a great name. And I remember, and I had his Kevin Dubrow poster on my wall, and I actually still have the sketch that I did of it. And I sent an email to him, and I wanted a signed copy of his book. And I said, this, and I said, I'm a huge fan. Here's my photos in case you care, but you're such an inspiration. And anyone who knows Neil can hear his voice when he said it. He's like, so he sends me a thing. He's like, hey, you're in Hollywood. I'm in Hollywood. I don't want to spend money to send the book. Can you come get it? Your stuff's really good. Anyway, but you just come by. Say hi. And I was like, he likes my book. And so I go by, and he is just like, again, one of the people that is everything you would expect him to be and more. And we just started chatting, and I'm going to his garage and hanging out, and I'm hanging out for 2 hours and shooting the shit and this and that. And a week later, he asked me sign to his Atlas icons to do. I'm like, I'm a pro music photographer. And then it was like, we're doing that. And then it was like a week later, the Hollywood Vampires were in town, and I was like, and this is when I was still new with it, so I wasn't shooting for anyone, and I would always just use my connections in the industry or this or that and get in. So I couldn't get a photo pass, and Neil's like, I got you covered, and he calls out and he got me a pass for it and everything. So it was really great. So I have one great shot of Johnny Depp, just it's like perfect. And oddly enough, because I had shot a couple other things, and I always had envy because all the photographers had multiple cameras, and I only had one body. So I brought my Leica Q, and I show up there, and I hadn't done any lessons, wasn't smart enough to put, but I brought my 70-200 lens. And it was at the Greek Theater. Well, the stage at the Greek is 3 feet high. So, no, it's like it's short. So you're standing like right at the performers, and they're right there on. So I'm like, that's the only lens I had, and I was like, oh shit. And then I had my Leica. So there a lot, and I'm like, I can't. At one point, I'm taking a photo of Joe Perry, and I come across, and my lens hits Alice Cooper in the leg because he's standing above me. He's like, I'm like sitting there, and it goes, and I look up, and just Alice is looking down at me like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, ah. But I ended up getting a photo of Johnny with the Leica, which is not the best concert, but it was just, and that photo was with the 28 millimeter, but it was just a fun
It's interesting you say that, because when I looked at that photograph, I thought that you had him in the studio, you'd got him to pose perfectly, that it was for maybe an ad for a guitar or something. I honestly did not know that that was a shot from a concert. I thought
Yeah,
you had
Yeah.
access to Johnny Depp to shoot him perfectly because
yeah,
that photo is that good.
yeah. And it's like I look at it and I'm sitting there going, but yeah, I had done I used to, and it's funny because people looking at my Instagram feed get kind of like, wait,
What?
Yeah, what?
yeah, it's like they come there for the Star Trek and they're like, wait, why is there Johnny Depp and Kiss? And I go, yeah, I do that too. They're like,
Yeah.
wait, you're music? I go, yeah, I do a lot of cool things. But I also had for years done street photography. And so people know me as all these different things. And like, wait, you're the Star Trek movie, thing. But it does come in handy because, like I said, Scott Ian, who's a big movie buff or whatever, I kept in touch with him. And when I had to, get Black Label Society, I didn't get approved by the press. I'm like, damn, and I'm like, Scott, can you? And he's like, yeah. But I shot Poison. Like they were one of the first bigger bands I shot. And I had met Bret Michaels before, but Ricky Rocket, we had, and this Alan would chime back in. We rented for the first Accept music video, Teutonic Terror. We rented a drum kit from Ricky Rocket, and it turns out that his ex-wife or someone that he was dating or something lived in my apartment complex in Santa Clarita, so I would see him all the time. So I was like on a I know you basis. So I when Poison, I was up in Toronto shooting The Boys, and Poison came to town, and I had his thing, and I hit him up, and I'm like, hey, can you hook me up with thing? He said, yeah. He's like, do you want to borrow my Leica? I go, no, I'm good. But oh my god, I can't believe Ricky Rocky actually asked me to do that. But yeah, it's one of those weird things that I have in my life. I've always made a point to make friends or find ways in with the worlds that I wanted to be in. So it's like all these people that I used to idolize as a kid. It's like like I had Neil's photo on my wall growing in high school, and then Regina Russell, who was an actress that I had worked with at Roger Corman. She later on in life became Regina Benally, and she was married to Frankie Benally. And I was friends with her. So at one point she's like, "Oh, Frankie wants to have you go over for dinner." I go, massive quiet right hand. I'm like, yes, I will go over. And
I think I can squeeze you in on Wednesday.
Yeah, and I got to be friends with him, and sadly, and again, and a wonderful thing of that, if you look at any of my photos of Picard's library, we had one of Frankie's paintings, and it's featured in just to the right of Picard's desk. So in his set, and that was something that I got from Frankie, and then sadly he passed away. So we're auctioning off that painting for a for pancreatic cancer charity to help raise awareness on that. But it's that thing of going, okay, so somehow I went from like not having anything to like working on Star Trek, hanging out with having Frankie Benelli cook me dinner. And by the way, the most amazing person, and but God, was he a good cook. And it's just like, but I'm like, how is this happening? And it's like, getting to shoot Kiss in concert and all this stuff is, so it's been an amazing adventure. And so I always feel blessed that I have these opportunities. And like I said, to have someone like Alan in your life, and you're sitting there going, I remember that cold day, and then tossing the. Yeah, it was like, it was so early in the fucking morning because Greg wanted to get the sunrise, and it was like, okay, but sunrise is like at 4:00, and so the band was like miserable. We were all miserable, and yeah.
So I gotta tell this. I'm gonna start a little further back than that. So I'm at Photoshop World, and I get a call from Scott Diusa, and he's hey, we're gonna do this Accept video out in close to you, out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm in San Diego, so it was about 2.5 hours of driving. And he goes, will you come and shoot behind the scenes stills for this video? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. He goes, great. Meet us at this like map coordinate at 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? He goes, because they want to shoot early morning when the sun comes up. And I'm like, okay, no problem. But it's like April or May. I mean, it was freezing, not just cold. It was like 2 pairs of jeans, every piece of clothing I could find in my car, and I still couldn't feel my fingers, freezing. And I remember taking the shot of Wolf Hoffman from Accept, and he's standing there. It actually ended up, I sold the image to Framus. They used it in a print ad. They chopped him out of it and put him with amps behind him. But it was originally shot at like 5 o'clock in the morning as he's standing on this thing, and he's wearing jeans and a t-shirt because he couldn't change, because he had to be in the same clothes for the whole video. And he was so cold.
Barely, like, couldn't hold the pick cold.
And they're trying to play the song over and over again, and you can see their fingers are shaking at times, so they have to stand there, and it was it came out brilliantly, but it was so
it was
cold.
And that was funny, because that was the third video. And again, you look back at it. So how did I meet Wolf Hoffman? I met Wolf Hoffman because obviously a huge Accept fan, but Wolf had gotten out of the business, and also tying this all back in, Wolf left the business, left music, and became a photographer. And I looked at his stuff, and so I had called him, and I had tried to hire him because we were doing The Biggest Loser, and they wanted to do these artsy portraits of like the cast members, like overweight people, but in an interesting, beautiful way to show the body forms. And I said, I think you would be the person to do this job. And we started talking about it, and that started a conversation and a friendship that lasted for years. Always with the caveat that I would say to him, I'm like, hey, if you ever want to do a video, let me know. I will pull every favor in the galaxy, and we will do a video for you. And he was like, yeah, okay. And that was like 2005, 7, 8. It was like early. No, it'd be like 2005. Anyway, kept friends for years. And then he met Mark, and the wheels started spinning, and he's like, we want to do a video. And he's like, I go, okay. And that was my first season of Justified. And we had just finished the show, finished the season, so it was March. And I literally got borrowed the lights from Justified, got all the people to the thing. And it's like, they spent $1,500 on Teutonic Terror. And we had fire and tanks, and so they got a lot bang for their buck. But one of the things we learned was we're the same wardrobe because we're cutting in between, and none of us that was my first music video directing, and they hadn't really. But if you look at that Teutonic Terror video, Mark is wearing glasses, not glasses, for the whole fucking video. And it was like, but you don't realize it at the time. You just go into the cutting room and go, fuck. So that was a fun experience. And then since they flew out here, they were here for a weekend. We did a second video the next day. So it was like a Friday night. We shot Teutonic Terror, and we didn't. It wasn't like a crazy music video shoot. I think we only had the location for like 6 hours. So we got everything in 6 hours. And then the next day, since they were there, I said, okay, I'm going to shoot Pandemic. And they're like, oh, what are we going to do? I'm like, I'm going to shoot you on green screen. I'll figure it out later. And then I shot each one of them individually, just literally. And I said, and they're like, so what? I go, I don't know. I got to finish Teutonic Terror. We have that. You don't have an album out because they hadn't even released the album. They had basically two songs at that point. So we did that, and then Teutonic Terror comes out. It fun thing. It crashed Twitter. That's a
There's a great story about the band Accept and Twitter. Just go back there. It was truly amazing.
But and then I decided to do, once the Twitter thing came out, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do like a comic book type of idea, and it became Pandemic, and it's like a page turn type of thing. And I had never used Adobe After Effects before. I'm like, well, I'm going to learn this thing. I'm going to do this. Here's my idea. It's going to be like a comic book. with the ending being, the pandemic's over or the pandemic continues or something like that. And at one point we had, because my whole idea was to get the guy who played Agent Coulson in Marvel to do a cameo, and he launches into the video. And at the last moment, Marvel, he's like, yeah, Marvel said no. Yeah. So, but he was very cool. But we ended up doing, so like Pandemic was like literally just 2 hours of shooting and me spending like 2 months of editing, figuring out how to do that. And then, so that was but it was funny because, at that point I had never done any concert photography. So it was like one of these things. I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, I don't have any photos of Wolf on a tank that I took. I'm like, I do have a video, but I didn't actually take any of the photos. So from that, and then all the wonderful stuff you did on the video, which was amazing. And then we ended up.
It was such an interesting day because not only was it just the first really behind the scenes look of watching a movie being or a video being shot, it was some of the little tricks that were done were really cool. It was the first time I'd actually seen we used a drone. Because like you could get a drone to do this flyaway shot for $1,000 as opposed to hiring a helicopter and a crew to do it for $100,000. It was one of those like, and then Greg took a guitar, cut out all the core stuff and shoved a GoPro behind the strings, and it was one of those things that I was like, that is just genius. So you actually get this, I don't know how long it is in the video, 2 seconds, but the playing actually is from behind the hand strumming the strings. And it was just like, just one of those moments. I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of that ever? Like, just, and then I remember driving home. I had to leave at 4:00. You guys were still filming. I had to leave because I had to go shoot a rave that night. So I went from freezing desert with a, German heavy metal band to a paint-covered rave party at the sports arena that evening, and people were looking at me going, "You have a very interesting life." And I'm like, other than the 4 hours I spent on the road today, it was really one of the more interesting days I've ever had.
But it's that thing, and I say the same thing myself is, we do have it. We have an interesting life. You have the thing, but it's like, it's not everything that people say. They're like, oh my God, you live the best life. I'm like, yeah, I've been out of work for 5 months.
Yeah,
that's not awesome. And it's like, people are like, well, they'll call you for Star Trek. I go, yeah, if Star Trek Legacy goes, they call me in a year.
Yeah,
hopefully, and I go, that'd be awesome. But hopefully, right now, I hope I'm on another show at some point between now and then. My mortgage company would like to, get some money, and it's like, it's that thing of going, you have all these things. It's like, there's good points and bad points and this and that. And, and I said, they're like, oh, you got to do Star Trek. I go, yeah, I got to do Who's Your Daddy too. So,
which kind of comes around to Picard and,
exactly.
and his son. Who's your daddy? You are.
Yeah, exactly. So,
listen, Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. That's 2 hours just gone in a heartbeat. But no, honestly, thank you for your time and the good work you've done on Picard as well, and all the other stuff you've done. I need to edit this episode and put it out straight away because I was looking forward to it so much. But like, I'm glad you two guys have like worked on something and become friends as well.
Oh yeah,
dude, we've even shared photo pair. We were at the House of Blues in Anaheim for what were they called? That heavy metal Scott Ian was opening, did the that super band. I can't
Supergroup.
Yeah,
was
what
it
were they
Supergroup?
called though? No, it was with Scott DeUso was the guy who hooked me up with it, and I'll think of it the minute we get away later. But it's always interesting because I have been in a photo pit for so long that there are times where I tend to sit and watch what other people do because I'm really curious to see how other people are approaching things, especially in big ones. And dude, your photos have always just been like,
I appreciate that. Yeah,
I
it's funny.
think part of it is that you literally don't post crap. See, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I shot this, and if they're not great, but here you go, and it's like,
Yeah.
I don't see that. So
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It was watching how people. It's like we had one photographer, and that I know a lot, and he does the reach, and it's like it's like,
yeah.
yeah, and I was just like, and it's always that one thing. So it's like literally, I was shooting a Ghost, and I had done the work, and at the beginning of the show, the four ghouls come to the front of the stage, and they do that great shot. I'm like, okay, that's the shot I want to get, and I run, get in position. I'm sitting right there, and he gets right in front of me, and I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no, and it's just, and then they come out, and he just, and I'm like sitting there going, mother. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I know the etiquette, but I also, I'm like, okay. Good thing you're 5'6" because I'm 6'2". So I'm like, oh. so I literally had to outreach it, but it's like so wonderful because it was wonderfully horrible because I went and I looked at like the the videos from the concert, and I go look for that moment, and you literally see the front of the stage, and I'm like, got him by about 2 feet above. It's just so ridiculous. I'm like, I got not to do this, but
like that Ghost show was great. We had the tour opener here in San Diego, so I had no idea what was going to happen. It was one of the most frustrating moments because I'm like, I felt like I was in the wrong position every single time something was going on because we had nothing to go from.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing though. It's like, and that's why when you say you like my photo, I'm like, I'm just waiting. Like every time I post something, I'm like, someone's gonna say this sucks or this. But it was like I remember that show specifically, and I'm going, I've been doing this for long enough that I shouldn't make mistakes. But it's just like literally the lighting threw me because it was like spotlights. It was like he was heavily backlit, and I'm just like fighting and I'm like, and then you're doing it, and you're trying to track the movement, and it was like this stage, and you're like going, holy shit! I thought I was prepared, completely not prepared. And I was so excited about this show, and I'm completely blown to shoot. And I was like so pissed off. And I got home, and I pulled a bunch of edits out, and I'm like, okay, this. But I'm like, I literally wanted. I'm like, I'm never gonna shoot again. I suck at this. I'm never gonna do it.
So here's the thing that happens every time. And we got, I shoot a show, and I come home very excited. Doesn't really matter what it is, because in my head, like there's a couple of shots that I'm like, I just can't wait to get these. I mean, like, for me or for the venue or for whoever I'm shooting for, like there's just a few of them that I just gut feeling these are going to be great, and then inevitably one of them isn't. It's just didn't something I didn't notice when I was shooting the flare, the light, the something, the expression, and then everything looks like it sucks.
Yeah.
Then I have to actually walk away. I have to get up and I have to get away from my computer. I have to go away. I have to come back like sometimes an hour later, sometimes the next day, and go, okay, I have to start this over, because that emotional blow when I've really screwed up a shot can just color everything else I've done. And that becomes my biggest issue. And that Ghost show is exactly like that. There was 1 or 2 frames that I'm like, oh, these are going to be perfect. And then when I looked at them on the screen, it was like, oh, that was a lot brighter than I thought it was. And well,
it was like, and I did the Anthrax show, and it's like I positioned myself like but no, I like put myself right in the right spot to get Scott Ian's jump, and I get it. And then it's like, but you're also in the middle of shooting, so you don't want to stop and look. But it was in between sets, and like I looked, and I when they started talking, I'm like, okay, I have a second. Scroll through, and I just see his head above the fuck. And I was just so pissed off, and it pissed me off the rest of the shoot. And it was like same thing happened with Zach. I wanted to get the shot where he's like has the guitar out, and I wanted to get a super wide, and I didn't get it. I was like fuck. And then I get home, and I'm then I start looking at the photos, and then I get to the shot with his head up here. And then I go to the next shot, and it's head, and I had him perfectly. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, oh, I got it. And I was like, but it just really makes me appreciate someone like Neil. And I look at Neil Zoltauer, and all these. I had the everyone's books, so I look at them, and when I'm looking at that book, I'm sitting there going, 36 exposures, 36 shots. You don't have a viewer, you don't have a check, you don't have a thing, you don't have you have a roll of film, and you got 36 shots.
That's how I started. I used to remember timing that, trying to get the first roll done in the first song, and then learning how to rewind and load a roll in the pit so that I could get 2 rolls of film in those first 3 songs and not shoot half of the second song. And it was like, and then running to the 1 hour development, the 1 hour little develop Pacific Beach, and dropping off the rolls and sitting in his parking lot. The guy would be like, "It'll be ready in an hour." I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay, I'll wait." Like I need to see if I got anything worth saving. And and then I made the mistake of switching over to slide film because it was cheaper to get it developed. So I would, but of course much harder to control the exposures. The exposure latitude on slide film was crazy compared to film.
Oh, really?
Film was easy. Oh yeah, the exposure on slide film, you were like, if you screwed it up, you screwed it up. There was
Well, that was the thing. It's like being in, I don't know if you've ever gone to Neil's garage. He just has just filing cabinets and everything's on slide. And I'm just sitting there going, like, literally the history of rock and roll next to a leaking motorcycle.
I have 10,000 slide shots in my garage sitting next to somewhere around 10,000 comic books in long boxes, because that's all I really, have.
But it's amazing, and that's what I love about it. It's like, for me, it's like a sport almost. It's the amp up to the show, to the thing, and trying to get the shot, and the better you get. And it's funny, I talked to some photographers, and they're like a little bit more jaded to this, and I go, and I think part of it is because for me, I'm just doing it to do it, and it's like this isn't my living, and I feel bad in some extent because like I know certain guys and everything, and I'm like, okay, these guys are making their living out of this, or these are like the guys. I'm like, you do your thing. I'm gonna be behind you, or I'll get my shot because I'm doing it to do it. I'm not gonna lose my job. I'm not gonna lose anything by whatever. You guys do your thing, and I'm here to watch and to learn. And it's like guys in LA like Jack Liu or
dude, Jack shoots like a lunatic, man. That guy is
he's like always
every
just
night.
Constantly every night. And I'm like, but he's always the nicest guy. And like, I'll ask him and he'll give me a foot. It's like I went one night to shoot I was trying to shoot Deep Purple, and I got in to shoot Joyous Wolf, who was opening up, and but I didn't get a Deep Purple pass, and Jack's like, he's like, yeah, they're gonna check you. I go, okay. He goes, but they won't if you're behind me. And he just kind of walked me on down there, and he's like, yeah, we're good. But he was just the nicest, and the camaraderie of the photography family in LA was something I never expected. I never expected that thing where you're like, all of a sudden you're all these guys and you see them all the time, and everyone's super nice and cordial and supportive online. And I was like, wow, I expected everyone to think I'm an asshole and my shit sucks. And they were completely not that way. They were always supportive and helping out and tips and this and that. And it's just the whole thing. And it's similar up in Toronto, but less, because I think LA is more music centric. But it's just, you run into so many of but I just found that LA has some of the best photographers around, and again, just the nicest people too.
Yeah, I mean, some of my really good friends, I love sharing a pair when they come down here. I don't go up to LA very much anymore because, well, it takes 9.5 hours to drive there and 9.5 hours to drive back, and it's just sometimes not worth it for the 7 minutes of shooting. But a lot of times those guys come down to San Diego because it's a little easier sometimes to get approved for some of the big shows. So I'll see Jack at a show, or Chris Loomis, or any of those guys. They
Chris and Joe Schaefer, and it was so funny. We all did right after the pandemic. It was like one of the first shows after the pandemic. Judas Priest and Richie Faulkner. It was one of his first concerts back after having his heart issue, and for whatever reason, it was at the Shrine, and they put us in the aisles all the way back. So it wasn't even like, it was probably the worst shooting position ever that I've seen, and for no real good reason. And it was like you had to pick a side. You were like, okay, so Queensryche opened up, and we all went to one side, and then it was like, but it was just so bad that I had like a 600, and you barely getting a shot, and we're all like within this one little area, and you're going, okay, so we're all in there with like literally stacked next to each other, all with our big huge lenses, and so then the photos, everyone posts their photos the next day, and everyone had the same photo of Rob Halford in the exact same position, except for the 3 people who were on the other side of the thing, who had that exact same photo, but from the other direction. But it was literally 6 people posting the same exact photo because that was the only photo to get. It was just like
yeah, it's one of those things where I always like people go, well, don't you feel like you're in competition with other photographers? And I'm like, no, because other than those really extreme examples where they've put you into the same spot with everyone else, I have sat. I think one of the best examples was Scott DeUsa and I. We taught together for years, but we never really shot a show together very often. But we did one, and we were both sitting in the photo pit right next to each other. We were standing at the House of Blues in Anaheim. We were shoulder to shoulder, and there's a shot of Chris Broderick, who we both actually know personally, and we both shot him walking out with his guitar, and we're both using Nikon cameras with Nikon lenses. We're standing 2 inches away from each other. We have taught together for like 8 years. We know, the 2 sets of images, because we're going over them the next day, of the same guy at the same time, were 2 completely different sets of images. Yeah. I went tight and vertical, making he left more space and went horizontal, like all these little changes. And I'm like, why would I be in competition with him? It's different. Now there are times where I see someone get a shot and I go, oh god damn, I wish I would have taken that. Like when I see a shot that I'm like, I wish I would have got that one. That's that's the only competition there is. I'm just happy someone got it. I'm upset that I didn't get it, but
and that's for me. That's the thing is that, and my biggest problem is that I just see myself as I try and be a friendly interloper, because I know that there are people who are, this is their job and they're trying to make money, and I'm not. So I'm like sitting there going, okay, I'm providing, like, because I write for these blogs and things, and it's like I am giving you very well written tripe reviews of the stuff. I'm doing, I as a writer, I've written tons of magazine reviews and stuff. So I'm like, yes, I write a good review, but they're getting it for free or for cheap or for whatever. And it's like, so I realize that I'm by providing the service and doing good photography, thank you for saying it, that I'm like screwing other people, because I'm like, you can get Dave, he'll do good photography for, whatever. And it's like, I'm devaluing the product, but, so that's why I try and, do it for other people. But I know it's that thing about there going, I think everyone's respectful of each other and whatnot. So I think that, and I always try not to undersell people.
But I look at it the other way around, because you're not going to an outlet. Let's take a big one. Let's take Rolling Stone. So someone gets hired by Rolling Stone to shoot a concert and write a review, usually 2 people, and they get a day rate. I'm going to make up numbers. So some guy gets $1,000 to do an article on a concert. You're not going to Rolling Stone and going, hey, I'll go do that for free.
Yeah.
So you're not actually taking work away from someone who's earning work. You are taking a photo pass away from someone else who might be writing for a blog. But that's okay. That's fair game.
Yeah.
Well, because I'm a house photographer in a venue here, so I'm getting paid for being there.
Well, and again, that most of the guys that are up here, they're the same situation. They're shooting for a radio station. They're shooting for the venue. They're shooting for a thing. So I stay out of their way. You whatever. But and I think that's the way everyone is, and everyone's very friendly. But and the one opportunity I had, I shot years ago. They had the Ride for Ronnie Dio, and there was a concert in a park in Van Nuys, and I would just something to do on a Sunday, so I went out and shoot. There was a couple good Bullet Boys were there, and but like towards the end of the day, all of a sudden there's people rumbling around the crowd, and all of a sudden out comes Dave Grohl to sit in and play drums for a few songs. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And because he was literally right behind the park was a grocery store, and he was there to buy some barbecue, to make some barbecue, and he heard the music and he said, "Oh, I'm gonna go check it out." And then he's like, "Oh my god, how cool is this?" And people are like, "You want to sit in?" And he's like, "Sure." So there I am, the only photographer at the show with Dave Grohl sitting in playing drums, in this whole situation. I'm like, I am golden. I'm like, so literally go home and edit the photos. I had great photos, sending them off to everyone. I'm like, I go, here, get this stuff, get a Rolling Stone. I'm going to finally get something. I'm going to get someone to, something. And the next day it's like nothing. I'm like, I'm really pumping it. And then all of a sudden, Rolling Stone, it's like some fan's iPhone photo, video of this. And it's like, and of course, and you're like, oh, they don't want to see the photo, they want to see the video of him playing. And so often now you see that in and it's not like a blog, it's Rolling Stone, or it's it's always the fan shot video that someone posts on YouTube that Rolling Stone can just share the video and they're not paying anything.
Yeah.
Or having to worry about the rights or the annoying. So. That's a whole nother. We can have a whole nother discussion on on rights and weird things.
We get. Trust me, that's one of the things that my music photography does pop up in my shows. In fact, they're in season 2 of Picard. Our blonde bombshell Girardi, having been taken over by the Borg, goes into a bar in downtown LA.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and she breaks the window. Well, if you look at the bar is wall to wall with my music photography.
Oh,
because
cool.
The bar has all this photography, but we couldn't clear it. So then I said, here, just use my stuff for free. It's fine. And then Paramount's like, oh, well, we can't. You have to have the rights to all those things. I'm like, well, I'll pick photos where they're headbangers. You'll just hair in front of your face, you can't see who it is. They're like, no, we need the image rights for each person in the photo. I'm like, well, I don't have the image right. And I go, I'll only put up people that I know. And they're like, nope, we need image rights for it. So I literally had to go get image rights for all the people. And I'm like, you gotta be fucking. I'm like, I'm trying to do this for free, and now you made my.
So we had You've got my concert photography book. I've got the cover on the wall over here. When I wrote that book, the inside images are all. It's not a picture book. It's not a tabletop book. It's not a book of images. It's a book on how to shoot concerts. So the stuff inside the book is protected under the how-to rule. There's no, the images were all fine. The cover of the book was a whole different story. And on the cover of the book, there's 5 musicians. 3 of them are actually good friends of mine. The 2 that are friendly, but I don't know, I don't go to their house, are Steve Stevens and Billy Morrison, who both play with Billy Idol. And the publisher and Billy Morrison is the main picture on the cover of the book. And the publisher goes, I need to have model releases for both of those images. So it just so happened that they were playing together with Camp Freddy in LA at the Whiskey, and I was approved to shoot it. So after the show at 1:30 in the morning, I had to go and get them to sign model releases for those images as they were leaving the club and getting into their cars.
Yeah.
And I've never felt like such a giant asshole in my entire life as being like, hey, Steve, that was a great show. Can you sign this, please?
And it's not an autograph. I want your autograph, but in this very specific place.
Right. Can we put, could you, I have their emails and stuff, but it just so happened that I needed to, they were like, it was all kind of set up ahead of time, but it was like one of those moments where you just like, I took the picture. They knew I took the picture. They allowed me to take the picture. They've used the photo. They've both used those photos for other things. They were both used for microphone ads that they approved and things like that.
Yeah.
But I still had to go stand there like a weird stalker guy at 2:00 in the morning, and get them to sign it after a club show. It was truly one of the most, and that was when I decided that if I was going to write books from now on, the only thing that's going on the covers are my dogs, because they're not going to sue me.
Well, that's why if you watch The Boys in season 1, when we were doing The Boys, it was not a thing. No one had ever heard of The Boys. They didn't know the comic book. They didn't, and then what they did know was not good, because the superheroes are bad, do bad things.
Oh yeah,
so we were trying to get like anyone to allow us to wear like band shirts or this or anything, and it was like nothing. The only one we could get was Billy Joel, and everyone else, if you look at all the band shirts, you can do something that says like Nirvana, and it doesn't have any images on it. But if it just says Nirvana, you can show it because it's just a band name or whatever.
Yeah.
But if it's like a logo or a photo, then you can't do it, which is so. But if it's, you trying to call anyone. So literally at one point they're walking down the thing, and we had to do like billboards, and they're like, oh, we want concert billboards. So I literally have more of my photography. There's like some Joe Lynn Turner stuff that I done. And I'm like, Joe, can I use your thing? And he's like, yeah, here's some. But I have like that quiver of music stuff that I now have because of Picard, that I have everyone's right thing. I'm like, I'm gonna put that in every fucking show.
It worked. The only image that I ever had to pull from a book was my nephew, because he was wearing a Thomas the Train t-shirt.
Thomas the Tank Engine,
Thomas the Tank Engine, whatever it is. They were like, no, you can't have that picture of him blowing out the birthday candles because he's wearing that t-shirt. And I'm like, what do you? And no, they'll literally come after us. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Nowadays with Photoshop, I would just remove.
My book has only got 3 photographers: you, Glyn, and me, and all the pictures I had to put in here were all, again, the publisher was, who did that photo, so I just went through and said, Alan, can I use any of your photos? And he went, yep. And then my friend Glyn, same, and then I just had a bunch of images I'd taken.
Well, and that's the thing, it's like people when they watch, luckily less of it in Star Trek, but anytime that there's a painting on the wall and a photo in a TV show, it all has to be cleared. And it becomes a massive, and part of the problem is because none of it's been really litigated. It's been sued and settled, but not litigated to the extent that here is the actual infringement. If I, every book cover that's behind me, just because it's there, does that mean that, it's a copyright infringement?
Yeah.
We see that on shows all the time. You see the bookshelves with all you see are the spines are turned around, so you don't see the books. And we see it on design,
which is
TV
weird.
It's free
it's free advertising. That's the thing. It's not like it's not like
it is until it's not.
Yeah.
Because and there's I went down a big, even before I got into photography. There's all these famous cases where someone does see it, and it's just a person who sees it and gets pissed off and sues, and then it sets a precedent that you can do that.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's that thing. But I had it happen years ago with the TV show Entourage, where a designer I know was working on the show, and I had worked with her before, and I had this panorama of Sunset Boulevard at night that it was a nice panorama, but with the streaking lights.
Yeah.
With a slow exposure. And we had used it as a backdrop for a show called More Sports. It was Jay Moore, the comedian. He had a talk show on ESPN. And she's like, oh, I want to use that image or something like it in one of our producer's office on Entourage, like in the show. And it was like, when I had done it, it was a triptych. So she's like, no, it has to be one piece. So I redid it and thing. And I sent it to her. I'm like, here you go. And, we're friends, but expecting to get some money out of it, but also whatever. So, and she's like, yeah, no, we're not going to end up using it. And I'm like, okay, well, so I'm like, I'm not going to ask her for money for something that it wasn't used. So I dropped it. Cut to like 2 years later, where I'm watching the show, and I was a fan of the show. And all of a sudden, there they are in one of the producer's offices, and guess what's behind them?
Oh,
my photo. And I'm like, that's my photo. And I'm like, so I'm like, it's in one shot. So I'm like, okay. So then I watched the rest of the season, and the final shot of the season has the cast of Entourage hugging it out in front of my picture. Like, okay, got to make a call now. So I called them and I said, that's my photo. And they're like, okay. I'm like, well, you don't have the rights to it. And they're like, yeah, we do. Click. I'm like, but you don't. And they're like, but we do. And I'm like, okay, please. I go, here's my thing. Send me the contract back. I'd like to see my signature on something because I know you don't have it. And then they're like, okay, yeah, well, I'm sure we have it somewhere. I go, but you don't. And that went on for like, whatever. And then finally I got some producer that's like, okay, we'll give you $500. I'm like, okay, but it took me more time than that. So, this is what I'm asking for. I'm $1,500 because that's the 3 days of the whatever. And they're like, no, you can have to take $500 or take it or leave it. I'm like, now you're annoying me. I'll leave it. And they're like, okay, great. Goodbye. We offered you money. You don't want it. You get nothing. And I'm like, oh, no, it's still. So then this is going on long enough that the show now it's getting ready for the next season. And they start running commercials. And the end of the commercial is them hung, in front of my picture. I'm like, okay. So I call them and it's the same thing. I'm like, okay, great. So I had a friend whose wife was a lawyer. We drafted up a contract and she's like, yeah, so you don't want to sue them because then you're a money grubbing person. So you're just doing a cease and desist. So you're saying you can't use my photograph anymore. And she goes, but what that will do is they can't use it ever. And that, since it's now going to come out on DVD, they can't use it in the DVD, which means they're going to digitally go take it out. And that's going to cost them money.
Yeah.
A lot more than $1,500 to.
Yeah. So then that's what we do. We send them the cease and desist. And then finally I get a call from HBO's legal. They said, yeah, we hear there's a problem with that. I said, there's not a problem. They used my photo. I asked for compensation for it. I said, I work in the industry. I do this. I understand the thing, but I also know I didn't get paid for the work that I did. I said, explain. And she's like, I'm sorry, how much were you asking for it? I go, well, I asked for $1,500, but now I got to pay a lawyer. So let's just say an even $2,000. And the lawyer went, I'm sorry, $2,000. And I said, yeah. She goes, you'll have a check this afternoon. Yeah. And it's like, and she goes, and thank you very much for your. And I go, oh, I'm well aware of what I go, this is $500,000. This is a $500,000 lawsuit that I'm giving you for $2,000.
Right.
So because my cease and desist is totally validated and it would cause you to digitally take it out to the tune of about $500,000. So, and she's like, yeah, these people are gonna get a strongly worded thing because the fact that you're doing this and being nice, they can't do this anymore. Because if you hadn't done this, they're screwed. So.
And now you get to say your photos in Entourage.
In Entourage, yeah. So, but so that was my first paid photograph too. So there you go.
Yeah,
cool. So did you get to shoot? So because you're a photographer as well, with the work you do you get to be official photographer on Picard?
No. The publicity people hire photographers to do that. And,
right.
Yeah. So, but no one's going to tell me that I can't bring my camera on set because what you can't take a photo. Hey, I'm the production designer. I have to take photos of the set. What do you what do you want me to do? But what I do, and then the publicity people will literally email and give me shit. They're like, you can't post photos of the cast. I go, it's a behind the scene, and they're like, we have behind the scenes people. I go, I've seen their photos. So I if you notice, whenever I post my Picard stuff, I always post it in black and white.
Yeah.
So I say it's an artistic piece and whatever. So they haven't been getting on me, but they did initially. I had a photo of Picard and Whoopi Goldberg in the bar, and it was like they're like little teeny in the middle, and they're like, yeah, you post an unauthorized photo of Patrick Stewart. I'm like, he's that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not worth it, but it's like, and now I think that they get it. It's like, okay, one of my photos gets 10 times the the press that their photo gets, because
Yeah.
it's an insight into behind the scenes, and
Yeah,
also I get it. No.
I will tell you this. I many years ago, I was photographing a little local festival. It's one of the reasons I met my buddy Mark. He was playing. The photos of them playing on the stage got good traction. The one photo of them sitting backstage got 100 times the traction. Like
Yeah.
the one behind the scenes glimpse of him sitting on a table tuning his guitar with the bass player sitting next to him talking. I still remember the shot. That shot got like it was crazy numbers. Like that one was like 10,000 people saw it compared to like 1,000 who looked at the actual shots of the show. Like one of those glimpses behind the scenes, everyone wants to feel that they've seen that and part of it, and they can get a little bit more of, oh, that's what happened. And
and that's why it's like I often sit back and do the I wish, and the whole idea of you see the guys who would go on tour, and listening to Neil's story about going on tour with Van Halen, and some of the photos, and it's just all, and that's really something that we don't get anymore, because the bands aren't doing that. They're all taking photos with their iPhones, and everyone has social media, and it's like everyone has so much access to the artist now that it's less of a thing. It's like, just, I remember seeing like, the Kiss photos of Kiss at their makeup stations. And I think it was, Neil's got a great photo of Motley Crue, and they had their road boxes that would open up, and there would be their little makeup areas and things. And I was like, how cool is that? Like each person has their own little road box with their own little drawers and things. And I was like, oh, that's, that whole behind the scenes thing was just such a wonderful thing. And there's so many great artists that they don't shoot live stuff anymore, or they would just shoot all the behind the scenes and the portrait stuff. And so there, for me, it's the photography is an ongoing journey that it's something that I'm enjoying getting into, and the same thing. But it's also handy to when I show my portfolio, it's like, well, what have you done? It's like, well, here's a photo of Patrick Stewart and behind the scenes. Oh, you do behind the scenes stuff? I'm like, well, kind of, So at some point, someone's going to pay me, because really the only photo I've ever been paid for is the Entourage, which but it's funny. And then the only music photo up, that I've actually had in like other than like a blog, was from my very first concert photo, which was, I did a reality show with Ted Nugent, Sebastian Bach, Scott Ian, and Evan Seinfeld, and Jason Bonham. And it was a VH1 show called Supergroup, where they all came together in Vegas to do a thing. And I shot photos at their concert because no one else was there. I'm like, oh, I'll shoot it. And it was used in a bunch of different papers. So I was like, oh, wow. So, and looking back on it, I go, that's actually a decent photo. And it was one of my only, that's my only music photo that I shot with film. So, but it was my first one published.
So is I saw as well, there's, because you obviously create a lot of production art, but I know you have artists who do the recreations. I know you've got like 3D and sketches and that, and you're ending up putting the set together based on the art. Did I see that there's a book coming out for Picard that may have your work in it?
Yes, it's a little bit of a sore subject. I had pitched, I'm like, I do photography, I write. I told them, I said, I want to write the book. I'll do the Art of Picard book by the people doing the show and do it from our perspective. So it doesn't seem like whatever. And they were like, no one's interested. We're not doing a book. We're not going to do that thing. It's not something, because again, it wasn't, the show wasn't getting the traction that it would warrant a book. And then season 3 comes out and it's doing well and everything. And all of a sudden I get a call from a writer in the book, and he's like, oh, I'm writing the book on the design of Picard, and I'm pretty much done with it, but I want to interview you. I'm like, okay, now would be, and he's like, do you have 15 minutes? And I got 15 minutes with the guy. So I'm like, okay. So yes, there will be a book. Yes, I will have my work in it, but I liken it to there's a book out called The Art and Design of Preacher.
Yeah.
Another show I did. I didn't hear about the book until a friend of mine bought it and gave it to me.
Okay.
It uses 32 of my photos that I didn't know about,
Oh,
nor
dear.
was I paid for any of them. So I'm like, you didn't ask me for it, you didn't credit me, and you just used them, and you didn't even give me a free book.
Wow.
And it's the same publisher that's doing the Art of a Card book. So I'm like, yeah. So they, if it's fine. I want to support the thing, but in the same point, it's like, okay, well, you say you give me shit for taking photographs, but now you want to use my photographs, which is
Yeah.
I wrote 3 books about the iPad. I'm a concert photographer. I'm a photographer. I said, hey, how about doing a book about iPads photography? And they're like, that's never going to sell, until 2 weeks later when they announced that they were doing a book on iPads and photography. And I was like, oh, so okay, got it. No problem.
I didn't mean to bring that up as a sore point. It was just I saw it on your feed, and I saw you kind of kind of knew you didn't have anything to do with it, but you obviously did, because
but also
in there.
And part of the reason I keep pumping it is because the PR people said to me, "Don't share stuff because we want to put it in a book."
Right.
Well, or they said we might want to put it in a book. I go, but I'll write the book. So I'm pumping up the book while sharing stuff and now everyone's like, oh my God, we want the book. I'm like, oh, it's here. It's going to be a thing. I won't make any money off of it, but all my work's in it. And so there you go. So, but again, go ahead.
No, go finish it.
No, so it's supporting the show and the whole thing. And in the end, it will be like, again, I am such a whiny bitch because I am living the best life. And it's like, oh, sorry, you whiny little bitch that you want. Your photographs of Star Trek are in a book about Star Trek that's all about you and what you did, and you're crying about this. Oh, sucks to be you. It's like, yeah, I should just shut up and just It's like, oh, you have to have the book on your shelf. It's all about your work when you're doing Star Trek. Is that right next to your photo of Gene Simmons? And and oh wait, your music video that you directed with Accept. It's like, well,
it's all relative, Dave. It's all relative.
So for those young people who are starting out and looking at stuff, what is we'll wrap this up with, what advice would you give someone who says, I want to do what Dave does? What's the best?
I would say the first thing is it's some advice that my grandfather gave me, and when I was going to Hollywood, and he said, if you're going to start coming up with a plan B, you might as well give up on plan A because you already did.
Right.
If you're going to do it. And I go, I look back at my career and I should have bailed 20 times. It's like, when your life is waking up every day going to who's your daddy, it's like you're not living the Vita Loca. But you're sitting there going, that's the point at which a sane person gives up and decides this is not going to work out for me. I'm going to go do something different. Perseverance, stick with it, come up with a plan, and then don't reinvent the wheel. I think that a lot of people sit there and go, and I look back on my career and go, yeah, I should have just figured out how other people have done it and do what they did rather than try to find my way through the things and figure it out. It's like, model other people. It's like, it works the same thing for music photography. It's like, I want to shoot a band. Well, how do you do that? Well, follow other people. What do? Oh, they write for blogs. Oh, well, I'm going to find a blog, get a thing, do a thing, get a music pass, figure out what they've done and try and do it. I was trying to do it. Oh, I'm going to call the singer and I know I'm going to hit him up on Facebook and do the thing. I'm like, no, other people have already figured it out. You just need to do that and, watch what they've done, figure it out and go, okay, yeah, this is what I do. Learn to do software and technology because that's a big thing. Every 5 years, we have a giant paradigm shift in that. So that's going to impact things. Now we're doing with the AR wall, like Mandalorian, where they put the Unreal Engine on the wall and you're designing for that. 5 years ago, that wasn't a thing. Now it's a huge thing, and it's even someone my age. I got to learn the software, how it works, all these different things. So you have to constantly be learning, constantly be doing things, but you don't quit. You just keep moving forward, and it's like because it's that thing where I've been doing it for going on 30 years now. You're like, yeah, it took me 30 years to get here. So when I was doing it for 10 years, that's a long time. And people are like, I'm giving up, I'm going to go do something else. But 30 years is a long time to spend doing it. And you end up doing a lot of who's your daddies, but eventually you'll get it. And, again, you can't discount skill and networking. But I think that's the biggest thing that I think that people would focus on, is that I would say probably 30% of what I do is design. The other 70% is people management, and that's both people above me and below me. How do you get someone to take you have an idea? How do I convince this group of people to do it? How do I sell an idea? How do I convince people that my idea is the best idea? And then when people come to you with a bad idea, how do I convince them that their idea is bad without saying your idea sucks, let's not do that? And how to do all these things, because people talk to me like, oh, you designed Star Trek Picard and you get all these great people to do all these things. I'm like, I get all the best Star Trek designers in the world coming to me, and they bring me an idea, and I'm like, that's not great, but I like this part of this. What do you think about it? Then I channel my inner Steven Spielberg and go, this and that.
Yeah, what about the green?
Attention to what he's doing, and it's like, it's not I'm going to say that sucks. I'm like, oh, I like what you did here, and bring it around, and then you bring everyone together as a team. But it's like, it's all that personal management that's really what sells it.
Absolutely, I totally 100% agree with that. It's definitely a people thing. It's a skill that so many young people need to learn. Is you don't just barge your way in and demand and expecting some instant results. You've got to develop relationships and work out how to work and deal with different kinds of people, like the alphas and the quiet people, and just know how to manage it.
Well, again, whether you're dealing with musicians or film people, you're dealing with a lot of very type A personality, and everyone in that room has a great idea. Everyone's idea is right. Everyone's idea is going to be perfect, and they're all different. How do you negotiate that? Because you're going to sit there, and at some point someone's going to come up to you and say, we're changing the name of the show from Reunited to Who's Your Daddy? And how you react in that moment and how you do all these things, that is what changes it, and whatever. And to bring the whole story full circle, Who's Your Daddy aired one episode of 10 that we shot. Why? Because it was stupid.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. No one stood up and said, this is stupid, this is a bad idea. Everyone just kind of kept their mouth shut, even though we're all doing it. And poor Finola Hughes had to sit there and say, welcome to Who's Your Daddy? And just for now, is yours an audio only podcast?
It's usually audio only, but I sometimes, like, there's already been a snippet earlier where you were talking about something that I might just put out as a teaser for the podcast. So if it's something you want on video, I can.
I will go find the video just so the viewers can go, oh my God.
Oh yeah, I can put it in we have a page for the show notes, so I'll put all your links and everything. But yeah, that definitely have to put that in there.
Well, Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time out.
Yeah,
it's been.
Thanks, mate. It's just been an absolute blast. Yeah, so I could talk to you about Star Trek all day long, but
well, hopefully, the stars align and I get on something else, and we'll come back and we'll do it again very soon.
Absolutely, you're always welcome back on, Dave.
And if the writer's strike goes on forever, and you got nothing to do, at some point I'll have nothing to do too, because it will flow down. It'll flow down to all kinds of productions, and we'll just go back and chat about something else.
Yeah,
there you go.
So,
brilliant. Listen, thanks very much, Dave. I'll put all the Twitter and your Instagram in the show notes so everyone can follow you. But thanks so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you.
Oh, you're welcome. And if you have any follow-up questions or whatever, just don't hesitate to give me a shout.
Cool. Thanks so much, Dave.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank
Dave.
you.
Cheers.
All right. Bye.